Okay, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Community Business Renewal Fund webinar. So during this session you'll learn all about the fund, what it is, who can apply and whether or not you're eligible. We've had a really great response to this webinar. We've had loads of people sign up for it. So we're just going to wait for a couple more people to arrive and for those numbers to go up, and then we'll get going properly. Okay, great. So we've got a really great turnout. Nearly 200 people signed up to listen to the webinar, and those numbers are still going up. So welcome everyone to the Community Business Renewal Fund webinar. As I mentioned, during this session, you'll find out if you're eligible, what the fund is, and who can apply and how you do that. Throughout the webinar, we'll be taking questions. So just to briefly explain, if you do put those questions into the Q&A box, which you'll see on your control panel, so not the chat function, as that won't be being monitored, but if you put the questions in the Q&A box, then those questions will go straight to the panel. The Q&A function is also recorded, so we'll get a printout of all those questions and they will be sent to SIB, who are the social investment business, and they're our delivery partners on this webinar. So if your question doesn't get read out during the session live and answered live, you will get a response by email in the days following the webinar. Okay, so please do put those questions in the Q&A box for the panel. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, so what we're going to talk about during this webinar. So we'll find out what the Community Business Renewal Fund is. Can you apply? The application process. And then, as I mentioned, live Q&As throughout the session, so we won't just be waiting for the end. You'll have a chance to answer questions at the end of each section. And yeah, just to remind you that the webinar will be recorded, and also your questions will be recorded and sent to the social investment business to be answered. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you are all familiar with Power to Change, but just a quick recap. We're an independent charitable trust, and we support and help develop community businesses across England. So the trust was established in 2015, and we support community businesses with networking opportunities, with grant funding, and we also have a research department as well. So community businesses are locally rooted, community-led, trade for the community benefit and make life better for local people. And you'll be hearing more about what we qualify as a community business later on in the webinar. Okay, so I'm hosting the webinar, so I'll be going through all the questions and reading those out. But our panelists today are Jenny Sampson from Power to Change, and she's the program manager. Sophie Macken from Power to Change, the head of market development, and Matt Fazal from Power to Change, who's the Program Improvement Officer. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to Jenny, who you can see, and she'll be talking to you about what the Renewal Fund is. Thanks, Jenny.
Great, thanks Lucy. So about the Community Business Renewal Fund, I'll start by giving an overview of the fund, including what it is and how to know if you're eligible, and the fund's priorities. So yeah, next slide please, Lucy. Okay, so first of all, we wanted to let you know that full guidance notes are available on our website. You need to go to Get Support, Programmes, Community Business Renewal Fund, and our guidance notes are there ready for you to download. Just to note, we've made a few small changes to the questions in those guidance notes over the last couple of days. So if you downloaded them a while ago, please go back on and download the new version. Okay, next slide, please. So what is the Community Business Renewal Fund? It is a 3.1 million scheme to support community businesses to recover from the impact of COVID. And it's part of a wider initiative called the Community Business Renewal Initiative. We want to support the communities who've been hardest hit by COVID-19. And so our fund is aimed at organisations who are supporting those hardest hit communities. The programme offers grants of between £10,000 and £20,000. and it's delivered in partnership between Power to Change and Social Investment Business. The grants are unrestricted, meaning that you can spend the money on a wide variety of different things. That could be core staffing costs, or there may also be capital costs to do with perhaps adapting your community business to the requirements of COVID to ensure that you can continue to support local people. But essentially, we made it unrestricted because we want it to be very flexible to meet your needs. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm now going to go through the fund criteria to outline who is eligible to apply. So you must be based within England and operating at a neighbourhood level. You must meet the 4 key features of a community business, and I'll go through those in more detail shortly. You must be an established organisation with a track record of trading. And in the guidance notes, you'll see there's some restrictions on round 1. You will not be eligible to apply if you've already received funding this year under any of our other emergency funding programmes. So if you've received Power to Change emergency funding this year, you're not eligible for round 1, but you will then be eligible for round 2, which opens in January. Okay. So yeah, that's round 1 restrictions. You must be an incorporated organisation, so you must be incorporated as, legally incorporated with a legal form. You must be in a sustainable financial position with good prospects of viability for the future. You must have a charitable purpose and exist for public benefit, and you must be able to spend the grant within 12 months. And you must also meet our state aid requirements, which are spelled out in the guidance notes. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just to go into a bit more depth about how we define a community business, you must meet the following criteria. So locally rooted. So what we mean by this is your organisation must be rooted in a particular geographical place, for example, a neighbourhood, a ward, a village, or a subsection of a city. And your work should build on the strengths and assets that exist already within that place to address the social issues and challenges and bring benefits to your local community. So that's locally rooted. And accountable to the local community is another community business criteria. So you must actively involve local people in shaping the direction of your organisation. And what we mean by that is how can local people be involved and contribute to your organisation? How do you consult local people? So for example, maybe you do surveys, or people can have their say at local meetings, or maybe you've got a members forum, that type of thing. But you should also have ways of communicating outwards your activities, for example, through website, newsletter, meetings, etc., so that people know about your work as well. So it's a two-way conversation. And so also we would look for the fact that you would have put structures in place to allow local people to have a genuine say in how the business is run. So for example, regular consultation sessions, the possibility of becoming a member, and possibly even that they might take a stake in owning your organisation, maybe through community shares. So these are all ways in which local people can have an influence on your organisation. Okay, so next point is making a broad community impact. Sorry, back to the, yeah. So point 4, making a broad community impact. Oh, I skipped one, trading. So you should be actively trading, and for this fund we're looking for organisations with an established track record of generating their own income. And for community organisations, often what this looks like is room hire, sales of services, sales of goods like second-hand furniture or bicycles, or maybe catering or meals delivery. So this is all examples of the type of trading community businesses do, and profits should be distributed locally and used for local benefit. And lastly, broad community impact. And what we mean by this is making a positive difference in the local area. And we'd be looking for organisations who engage with a variety of different groups in your community and deliver impact against a variety of different community needs. And you may have a specific focus on a disadvantaged group, for example, Black and minority ethnic groups or disabled people, where this fits into the context of you also supporting the local community more widely. Okay, so That's broad community impact. Okay, so looking at the priorities for this fund then, we're looking to support organisations working in communities which have been hardest hit by COVID. So we'll be prioritising applications from businesses operating in areas with high levels of deprivation, and also those led by and for Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, and those led by and supporting disabled people. And the reason we're doing this is because there's research that shows that the poorest communities in England, people from BAME backgrounds and disabled people, have been disproportionately badly affected by COVID-19. So that's point one there. Point two is increasing diversity in the community business sector. So we also want to prioritise this. Organisations which are committed to promoting diversity on their board of trustees, amongst their leadership team and staff, volunteers and service users. We're also looking for community businesses who are nurturing young people to become future leaders in the sector. And then lastly, supporting the growth and impact of the community business sector. So what we mean by this is looking for organisations who are leading the way to ensure community is at the heart of local recovery from COVID-19. And how you might show this is possibly you might be working in partnership with other influential organisations locally, like your local authority, or you might be working to address global issues such as climate change or racism. You might be working locally on those bigger issues. So we want to be supporting leaders that are at the heart of recovery. With this fund. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so we've got a pause now where we've got an opportunity to take some questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, we've had loads of questions come through, so we'll get started straight away. So the first one's from Laura. How do you calculate who's operating in areas of IMD 1 to 3? Is it based on postcode?
Yes, we would ask you for postcode. Yes, it's based on postcode. It's not necessarily the postcode your organisation's based in, but it's your area of impact. So we ask you for the postcode of area of impact.
Great, thanks Jenny. Does local routing have to be exclusive? We are based and operate in Vauxhall, Lambeth, yet we also support people from other boroughs who visit and partner with us.
I mean, it's never completely clear cut, but as a general rule, we would look to work with small neighbourhoods. And the reason for that is that if organisations are focused on particular neighbourhoods, we believe they can tune into the problems in those neighbourhoods more accurately. Great.
This one's from Ivan. We are a charity providing services but not trading. Are we eligible, please?
No, you need to have a track record of trading.
Okay, thank you. If we apply for this fund, will it prevent us from applying for other power to change funding for the next 12 months? That's from Neil.
I can't say definitely, but as a general rule, we don't have any often we don't have any restrictions against applying to multiple funds. Sometimes we do, as you've seen with this particular fund, where we're putting on round one restrictions, but often you can apply to more than one power to change fund. So it shouldn't, hopefully, restrict you, but I can't say definite.
Can CIC limited by guarantee apply?
We're open to a big range of legal forms. You'll see from early on in the application form, there's lots of different legal forms who can apply. What we'll be interested in with a CIC is, do you meet our community business criteria? So it's essentially down to how well you can articulate the fact that you fit those criteria.
Okay, will there be earmarked areas for the hardest hit set by the fund?
We're going to be working that out by looking at a combination of factors, including index of multiple deprivation, but also other factors which indicate deprivation, for example, BAME or disabled.
Thanks. If the criteria is for organisations which are severely financially affected by COVID-19, then why state that organisations must be financially stable? Is that not the reason for the fund?
I guess what we as a funder, we want to make sure that our funds are going to the most productive possible use. And so what we're trying to achieve with that is we're trying to mitigate the risk that our funds will be put towards an organisation which then fails, which then goes into administration. So that's what we're trying to achieve with that criteria.
Okay, so just scrolling down, we've had quite a lot of questions.
Can I just comment on that one as well? So I get what the questioner is asking there. Obviously, we're part of why we've done this work is around the massive impact that COVID's had. But what we're trying to kind of use as a filter there is that the financial impact has been from COVID, and kind of rather than that there were financial difficulties before COVID. So that's where we're coming from with that one.
Perfect.
Very much, Sophie.
Great. Well, there are loads of questions, but we've just gone past 1:15. So we'll move on, and then we can come to some more because there's other sections for questions later on. So we'll move on to the next section, and that's Matt.
Great, thanks, Lucy. So I'll be running through a bit more about how you can apply to this fund. So if you could move on to the next slide, please, Lucy. So the stage one of this application will basically check whether you meet the criteria for this scheme. So you'll be able to access the application form directly via this link. And when rounds open, you'll have 3 hours to complete your application. So we need to limit the amount of time the applications are open because, as I'm sure you can imagine, we will be getting a lot of applications through. But what I would strongly recommend is that you have a look at the application guidance, which is on our website. And at the bottom of there is all the questions in stage one. So you could perhaps get a Word document open, get your answers ready so you can just fill it in when it comes on Tuesday the 3rd of November. So as I said, the deadline is 1 p.m. So we won't be able to accept any applications after this deadline, such as sending it by email a few hours later. What we'd recommend is just applying for a later round, so round 2 or round 3. So as Jenny has already mentioned, we'll be prioritising organisations who haven't received emergency funding from us in the first round. So if you have received emergency funding from Power to Change over the past few months, you won't be eligible for the first round of this fund, but you will be eligible for the 2 later rounds. We're expecting to take through around 100 applications for each round. In terms of giving you an idea of the amount of applications we're expecting, obviously it's really hard to predict. But our most recent COVID-19 community-led organisations recovery scheme, or clause, that received 800 applications. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea of how many we could expect. Over the 3 rounds, though, we do expect to fund between 140 and 160 organisations. In terms of next steps, you'll just have to wait to hear if you have been successful to get through to stage 2 of this fund. You should expect to hear that within a week by Tuesday, the 10th of November. So that's when you should expect to hear whether you've been successful in making it through to the next round, next stage rather. Next slide, please. So if you're eligible, Social Investment Business will invite you to complete the second part of the application form. You'll be given 5 working days to complete that. So you'll be sent the link to the application, you'll click on it and you'll have 5 days to complete it. Again, we will be putting the questions as part of separate application guidance for stage 2. We'll be putting that on our website. We're aiming to do that by Tuesday, the 3rd of November. So you will have time to have a look through the guidance and the questions before you know if you're successful or not. In terms of what you'll need for the second stage, so we'll be asking a bit more information about your financial history. So that could be from your most recent annual accounts, but I would really recommend as well making sure you've got the person who's in charge of finance at your organisation on hand, just to answer some of the questions that we'll be asking about that. We'll also be asking a few more narrative questions. So the first stage is more drop-down questions. The second stage is more narrative questions. So we'll be asking a bit more about how your income's been affected by COVID-19. And we'll also just be asking some more open text questions about how you meet our priorities for this fund. Yeah, and just, I suppose, just to reiterate that I would really strongly recommend having a look through carefully what our eligibility criteria is and what our priorities are, because we'll be asking you to justify that in the next stage. So once you've completed your stage 2 application, that will then go to assessment, and we will put it in front of our decision panel. Next slide, please, Lucy. So yeah, so as I mentioned, following our assessment, we'd also do some due diligence, which you can read a bit more about what that means in our application guidance. We'll then be able to decide whether or not to award your organisation funding. So the committee's decision will be based on how well your organisation fits the eligibility criteria and the fund priorities. And as I mentioned before, we're expecting to take through across the 3 rounds 140 to 160 organisations, and we are expecting a really high demand. So it does mean that if you are through to the stage 2, you're not necessarily going to be successful in receiving funding. And just lastly, any decision is final. So if you are unsuccessful, you won't be able to apply to a later round of this particular fund. And yeah, I think that's everything. So I think we're going to move on to questions now.
Okay, great. So yeah, we've got loads again, so we'll rattle through them. What percentage is required from trading? That's from Naomi.
So there's not a particular percentage. We're particularly interested in organisations that receive a higher percentage of trading. So say 50% or above. If it's below 50%, that doesn't necessarily mean you're not eligible. I would say if your trading is around, 5%, then you probably won't be eligible for this fund.
Okay, does the disabled criteria include mental health?
Yes, it does.
Does offering services to the community count as trading, or does it have to be something sold, so buying services?
So if you have, for example, a contract with your local council, that would count as trading. I'm not exactly sure what this person means in terms of services, but if you're providing a service and charging a fee for that, then that could be considered as trading income. Great.
Jenny, do you want to?
Yeah, I've made my video work, but I can't see myself. Can the
party see? I can see you, Jenny.
Okay, good. All right, just checking.
Sorry. Okay, so will you support parish and town councils to apply?
Okay, so no, I think is the answer to that.
No. Okay. Do you have to be led by the impacted groups as well as supporting them, or can you just be supporting them with a clear commitment to promoting diversity?
Okay, I guess it's always a sliding scale, but if we would be looking for two-way communication. I think, obviously if you're providing a service to a group of people, it makes sense to ask that group of people what they want, and if it's going well, delivering that service to them. So we'll be looking for sort of two-way information flow in the form of surveys, and how do you ask local people what they think of your services. But it's more than that, actually. We'd want local people to actually, take a bit of a role in designing, shaping the direction of the organisation, all that kind of thing. So, yeah.
I think, and just to add to that, we would look favourably on organisations that are led by disabled people or BAME-led. But that's a priority for us, but it's not an eligibility. So if you're not led by a BAME or disability, that doesn't mean you're not eligible.
Is
Lucy, can I just come in? And I noticed there's quite a few questions around the elements of the community business definition, which is completely understandable. What I'd really recommend is having a look on our website. There's a lot of resource to explain each element. I particularly like, there's some videos, so community businesses themselves explaining what each of those elements means in the context of their work. So I'd absolutely recommend having a look at that. So I think it really brings it to life.
Great, thanks, Sophie. Is delivery of government training contracts considered trading?
I can come in on that one. Yes, yes, it is.
Does each round have the same amount of funds available?
Broadly speaking, yes. Yeah, broadly speaking. Obviously, it depends the volumes of applications we get into each particular round, but yeah, broadly speaking, we're aiming to allocate the same amount of funding each round.
Okay, can you expand on the point about being a BAME or disabled people's organisation, but also working with the local community? Do these organisations also need to run projects and work with other groups of people?
So there's more information on this in the application guidance, and actually within the questions themselves, there's a bit of guidance there. So I'd recommend that you head to the guidance and have a look for a bit more information on that. Okay,
Darren's concerned about the time slot. That time slot sounds challenging. Will your ICT manage what happens if there's accessibility issues due to demand?
We're pretty confident that the ICT systems are going to work okay, and the reason for that is that we've run quite a lot of similar programs before over the course of this year, you know, using similar systems. So, so we've planned it out according to our experience so far this year. It is a tight turnaround, and that's just the way it is.
Okay, we've got a question here just asking for clarification on something Matt just said. Did Matt just say that you still have to have maintained 50% of your, sorry, it's gone off my screen, 50% of your anticipated income to apply for a grant to address loss of income?
No, I didn't say that. No. I think that might be referring to my answer about trading income. But yeah, that's not right. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, I think, yeah, we've gone through a lot of the questions in that section. So I think if we move on, a lot of the questions might be answered in the final section. So we'll go forward. Oh, sorry, I'll hand over to the next person.
Okay, so I'm now going to talk to you a bit about some of the other elements that will be coming down the line alongside the grant funding. You'll find details of all of these on our website. The best place to get updates is by signing up to our newsletter and keeping an eye on our social, and we'll also update the website as we go. So there's a community business mutual aid network. Now this is free online peer support. So it's a space where you can go, it meets weekly to talk to other community businesses. You know, if you're having a particular concern, you can talk to them, and that's available at any point. We've also got quite a wide range of capacity strengthening support available. Now this, again, there'll be support also to think about actually what is the most key elements that you could do with capacity support around. There's also Recovery Boost, which is around community share offers. So if, for those that aren't familiar with community shares, that's where the community, your local community, would perhaps put some money in alongside perhaps grant or other investment to allow you to work on a specific project or specific activity. So you could kind of think of it as perhaps a more formal or more advanced form of crowdfunding. We'll also be offering a crowdfunding scheme as well. So there'll be match funding. As with our share offer, there'll be some match funding to put alongside crowdfunding initiatives. We'll be providing tailored information and support around buildings, because we know that a lot of community businesses own or manage buildings, and that's a particular concern. And we also really want to tell the story of what's happening for organisations in the sector. So if you've had something go really well, or you've got an interesting story to tell, we'd love to amplify that and get that out there. So please do get in touch. Great. So I will hand back over to Matt.
Great, thanks, Sophie. So just wanted to summarise really. Please do have a look at our guidance on the Renewal Fund, because it has lots of useful information. It has all the questions as well. If you have any specific questions that you're really not sure about, you can reach out to Social Investment Business, who are our grants administrator, on that email address. And just to say, if you've been asking questions in the Q&A that haven't been answered, we will be contacting you about, or we'll aim to contact you to answer any specific questions you have. And just a reminder, make sure that Tuesday the 3rd of November is in your diary, so you can fill in your application between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on that day. Thanks, back to you, Lucy.
Just a couple of questions in the box. I know we've got people behind the scenes who've been beavering away and answering them live by just typing the responses as well. So thanks to those guys as well. This is from Tanya. Are you looking to relaunch the Bright Ideas Fund and the Community Business Fund, which you suspended earlier this year due to COVID?
Sophie, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we'll be announcing plans around some of the programmes that we've paused fairly soon. Nothing more to share at the moment on that.
Okay. Can an arts organisation who is a charity apply?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's down to does that arts organisation, which is a charity, do you meet the community business criteria? Is it a locally rooted charity? Are you community accountable? It's those kind of things that we'd be interested in. But yeah, there's no reason in principle why an organisation like that shouldn't apply.
Okay, it's just a couple of questions. Sorry, I've answered that one. Please, can you clarify for me, can non-place-based communities apply? E.g., leader with lived experience of community issues with volunteers spread around the UK, creating solutions to community problems.
Yeah, so the Power to Change focuses specifically on geographical communities, so I'm afraid the answer to that one is no.
Okay. What are the time scales in terms of spend? How soon does the money need to be spent?
Yeah, so that's in the criteria, the eligibility criteria. You need to be able to spend the funds within 12 months. So it's 12 months from when you are awarded the grant.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I think we've come to the end of the. Oh, we've just had another one. Our business project is about to make Our business project is about 29% of our turnover. Would this be too small to make us eligible?
I mean, Matt, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I think, again, it would depend on how you meet other aspects of the eligibility criteria. As I said before, a higher trading income can be viewed favourably, but we do have to take into consideration all the other elements of your business. So for that particular question, I would suggest that you have a look at our fund priorities and our eligibility criteria. And if you feel like you perform strongly on other aspects of what we're asking for, then a 29% trading income shouldn't necessarily hold you back from making it through to the next stage.
Okay, so we are getting just a couple of questions in that are quite specific to organisations and about one criteria or another. So I guess it would just be for me to remind people that all the criteria are listed on the website, and you can go and check out each one individually in more detail, rather than us just go over sort of the same points on this webinar. You can go and read it at length in the guidance. I think that's sort of brought us to the end of the webinar today. So I've just left it on this screen with the final details, the Power to Change website, SIB's email there, renewal fund at sibgroup.org.uk, and then the date of round 1 at the bottom there. So this webinar, the recording will be on the website from tomorrow morning, on the renewal section. And so anything you'd like to add, Matt or Jenny, or Sophie, before we say goodbye?
Just to say thanks so much for coming onto the webinar, and I hope that we've given you some useful information, and I hope that we get some good applications.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Thanks everyone, take care.